Welcome to the Teacher Fellows Podcast. My name is Ryan Rarick. I am an education pathway teacher in Washington County School District. As always, I am joined by my colleague, friend, and 2020 Utah Teacher of the Year, Lauren Merkley. Lauren, the days are longer, the temperatures are warming up, and the seasonal depression is going away. How are you feeling today with this podcast episode?
I feel amazing. I went for a run outside today, which felt like cause for celebration.
Yeah, these are champagne problems right now. I'm in St. George and we're dealing with 3 days ago, it was 55 degrees. Yesterday it was 80. Today is close to 90
Oh,
and it's glorious, but I'm not quite ready for the heat. I'm going to go ahead. We have two excellent guests today. We are joined by two fellow teacher fellows. First guest is Amanda Muffler, who is in her 10th year teaching secondary English. She teaches at Uinta High School and is passionate about creating lifelong learners who understand diverse perspectives while maintaining equity in education. And she prides herself on the relationship she builds within her classroom. Amanda's going to be joined today by Kaitlyn Van Wagoner, who is also in her 10th year teaching secondary English language arts. And her particular passions are teaching literature and advocating for English language learners. She teaches at Clearfield High School. Amanda and Kaitlyn, welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Thanks for having us.
Before we jump into it, I'm going to go over the general outline. We have a little 5-minute intro, which is what we're doing right now. Then we will interview Amanda and Kaitlyn for about 20 minutes. And then Lauren and I will wrap up the episode with our final thoughts and takeaways. Lauren is going to give us an overview of our topic today.
on this podcast, host and guests alike are English teachers. We're coming to the end of the school year, and lately a lot of things have been in the media about English teaching and the subject of English being in somewhat of a crisis. So on the one hand, there's all these articles about English major numbers are plummeting across universities. People are getting rid of freshman writing seminars while complaining that freshmen in college don't know how to write. English curricula are changing. We're hearing about banned books. Some curricula are taking full novels out of the curriculum because kids don't read them. There's a litany of reasons. At the same time, English is sort of under siege by AI, right? So thinking about these large language models and ChatGPT and how that's interacting with teaching writing, how that's interacting with kids doing their own writing. So it sort of seems like English can't win in this moment. I'm so excited to have you both on to talk about your personal experiences with these kinds of changes and these kinds of conversations that are happening, as well as any advice that you can offer to our listeners. So we have two veteran English teachers as guests. Ryan mentioned you each have been teaching for 10 years. And I wonder if you could start by maybe just giving us a little bit of an overview of how, in your experience, the craft of teaching English has changed over those 10 years, whether in the kinds of text you're teaching, the kinds of strategies you're teaching, and or how they're responding. I want any kind of I'm not just looking for negative change, but any kind of evolution of the teaching of English. Kaitlyn, do you wanna get started?
Sure. I mean, off the top of my head, the things that I have adjusted to the most are one, the needs of my students. The way my students learn has dramatically changed in the last 10 years from when I started teaching. And then also technology. Those two things I think and they probably are related, but they've had the biggest impact on how I teach day to day in the classroom.
Say more about just like another couple sentences about what you mean about technology. Do you mean their personal technology? Do you mean the technology you're using to teach?
Both, all of it. And some of it's been really positive and some of it's been a real struggle.
Okay. I'm sure these things are gonna come up, but Amanda, just to get us started, what comes to your mind as you think about how your craft has changed over a decade?
I would echo everything that Kaitlyn said for sure. I think, when I first started, it was like, yay, technology. We love it. How much can we implement it? And like that was how we got our students engaged in learning. Now they are not engaged in learning if they are engaged in their personal technology or even the provided technology. So I am like total reversal back and trying not to use technology in my classroom and instead using paper and pencil, avoiding their own personal technology or own individual technology, I should say. Also, their needs have changed, like Kaitlyn said. What I've been teaching in terms of how to get them engaged and the activities I do, I think has changed. Like you mentioned, the length of text has changed a lot for me. I no longer teach novels at all, which is crazy, but I don't. And that was not necessarily my choice, but it is a decision that has been made.
Before we move on, when you both say the needs of your students have changed, so I'm hearing some of the needs are in how they get engaged, the need that they have to be engaged in certain ways. Is there anything else you want to say about how you feel like the needs of students have changed in English class, either Kaitlyn or Amanda?
I feel like everyone always says pre-COVID, post-COVID, but that is a factor. I do think our needs have changed in that lens because of the loss of learning during that time, just because it was not the same. And so for us, our students definitely lost a lot of reading and writing instruction. And so just the needs of what I'm teaching isn't the same level as what I taught, even though I'm still teaching the same grade levels that I taught before. So I guess that is what I meant.
That's great.
I have had to shift my mindset over the last couple of years because I was seeing it as a deficit. I was getting seniors. I primarily am teaching seniors. Their literacy skills are not what I was accustomed to. They were shockingly low, and there were big holes and big gaps. I found that very alarming, especially for seniors who are about to graduate and embark on the world, and they don't have the stamina to reading a whole novel independently is an impossible task for many of my students. I've had to adapt to how I change. I can't give assignments or activities the way I used to because they don't have the skills or the grit to approach them as my students have in the past.
Kaitlyn, with what you just said right there, that was a question that was percolating in my mind. So I do teach some English classes right now. I ran into this problem when I was teaching AP Language and Composition and 10th and 11th grade English. One of the things that you were just talking about, assigning at-home reading, like sending a novel home with the students. I was learning that less than 50% of my kids were getting the reading done. My whole lesson was designed around the assumption that they would have done the reading. I had to make some adjustments pretty early on to be like, okay, what am I going to do? Am I going to keep teaching the same thing, but only 40% of my kids are even going to benefit from this? Is this going to be punitive where the kids that didn't do it are now I'm going to set them in another side of the room and tell them to read while I teach the other kids and I'll just have never caught up with them? I just made the adjustment to shift all of my reading day in class, and it reduced how many novels I could do. I knew for sure that we were getting all the way through it and that everybody was doing the reading because we were doing it together or in small groups. I would love to hear more about what are some specific instructional approaches that you've adjusted based on the needs of your students that you're identifying.
I could say I have also had to do that too with the reading stamina that I see is also no longer as lengthy as it used to be. I have always done all of my reading in class except for when I taught AP. I required them to read outside of class and I just said, you're AP in college, you have to. So figure it out. They were the only ones but none of my other students will. Exactly what you were describing. So I now have to do all of my readings in class. I don't assign any homework ever because they won't do it. So we have to be really strategic about what is most essential for them to learn, be like the best text to get them exposure to all of the different things that we want them exposed to before they see it on a state test or anything like that. What's going to be a text that would allow them the best analysis skills? We are set to a certain curriculum. We can't just pick any text we want. So we have to be very selective in my team with the units we pick, the text we pick, and the activities we do. Everything is timed down to the minute. We have them trained very well with like annotation skills, and we do that the same all throughout high school. We have to be very selective about what we are doing.
How about you, Kaitlyn? What are some instructional strategies that you adopted as your career has progressed to adjust to the needs of your students?
I've done the things that you guys have already mentioned, and I also teach CE literature and AP literature. And again, the only classes I give independent reading assignments to are like outside of class reading expectations. But even there, I give a lot of scaffolding on how to read. I always make sure I give students a very clear purpose in reading, which really helps them read. That can look like a lot of different things. Currently in my lit class, they have to prepare for a discussion in a certain way and they rotate. And so they lead the discussion. So it's a very effective way, but it's a pretty scaffolded way as well for them to get to a deeper level of reading and critical thinking.
I taught AP as well and core on level English. These are struggles I think any teacher that has a content heavy, text heavy discipline would understand. I often felt quite frustrated by these kinds of things, that it was hard to assign reading outside of class, etc. However, I will say that much of what you're describing actually forces slower reading. It forces, to use your word, Kaitlyn, much more intentional reading, much more scaffolded reading, much more sort of skills-based reading rather than racing through 30 pages at home. I even think about how I read in high school when I loved English, but I was still like, racing through 30 pages of the Scarlet Letter to say I had read it.
I'm literally in the Scarlet Letter right now.
Oh, you are, right. And the Scarlet Letter, I like it. It's a tough hang if you're 15. But I think there is something to be said for actually helping students slow down in reading and read critically and analytically, even if it's like paragraph by paragraph. We don't chalk up books on the scoreboard that way. We don't expose them to a huge swath of the literary canon. But to your point, Kaitlyn, and to something Amanda said as well, that is actually building reading skills that are translatable. So I think it's easy to see this as a deficit, and I've definitely fallen into that before. I think there are skills that emerge from these types of approaches that don't emerge in the kind of, we're going to read 10 novels in an academic year approach.
Totally. And like we were saying earlier, our needs of students have changed, and we have noticed they are lacking some of these skills. And there is no other way to do that than with these shorter texts. So that is the pro. For us in my district, the curriculum we use forces a first read and a close read of every text. Some of the conversations we've been able to have in class and some of what they have pulled out has been incredible. I always model the annotations I'm seeing and what I'm thinking. I always start with what they notice. I've been teaching these texts for a while now. We're on trimesters, so it seems like I'm repeating them a lot faster. I have my list of what I'm noticing. Each trimester, they are just like pulling out more and more. This is our third year with this curriculum. So the students that have had it for multiple years now are used to this routine. And I can see the analysis skills getting better already. It is incredible to see that we're getting back to how things were before, when they had those great thoughts and they made those connections and they weren't like, are we done yet? I want to get on my phone. They are in it and having great conversations that I don't even want to stop. And I love having those moments in my classrooms.
I was going to bring that up too, because we've talked a lot about, we've mentioned the word deficit a few times, or maybe some of the skills that we're lacking. And I do want to give us time to transition into talking about the writing component as well with AI. I just wanted to build off of what you just said right there, Amanda, is even with some of the frustrations and some of the adjustments that we've had to make where we shift a lot of our reading to happening in the class. And I don't know if this is a universal experience, but I generally see that most kids still get excited about reading when they get it. So it's like if I'm teaching a short story or even just reading a chapter from a novel and I model some of the thinking that should be happening while you're reading, and then the kids start to mirror that modeling and they make predictions and clarify what's going on or understand the foreshadowing. They love it. That's a human thing. I agree with what we're saying is I'm seeing that maybe there's less reading, although I will say there's like a pocket of students that I have to like take their books away from them so that we can teach. Like they're distracted by the book, not by their phone. It's kind of actually breaks my heart that I have to remove this from you, but I need you to learn about like how to write an argumentative essay today. Kaitlyn, that question is, do you see that as well? Do you see some kids who maybe are traditionally not super stoked about reading, but when they get it, they enjoy it in like a human way?
Yes, absolutely. It's actually one of the benefits I find in reading shorter texts. You can have more variety and diversity in your text when you are reading more shorter text. I love that because I can make sure everybody has something that they enjoy at some time, or everybody gets new experiences, or everyone gets a mirror in literature in a way that I can't with longer text, especially with all the book banning that's been happening in the last few years, and to me at least. That is a benefit of moving away from longer text.
So we have only 5 minutes, so I'm pretty sure we can like tackle AI and tie that up in a bow with the great minds on this podcast. I'm wondering where to start. Kids have free access via the information superhighway to things like ChatGPT that can produce passable writing, maybe good writing, depending on how you massage your prompt, in seconds. So maybe in this part about it, we could have shifted a little bit more towards advice. How have you navigated this? What would you say to a teacher who is struggling with either how to incorporate it into teaching or if to incorporate it into teaching and or how to navigate student use of it in a way that is productive and leads to productive conversations about writing and rather than a punitive, prohibitive conversation?
I haven't had huge problems with AI, like things that I view as problems with AI in my classroom. The students who have a tendency to use it in inappropriate ways are generally the ones who are absent all the time, who are late, who are missing instruction, who are missing content and missing reading. So they don't have anything to write about or they don't understand how to write. I don't have a solution for that. They're not very good at it. I don't think they're getting past me because the ones I see are so bad. Like they don't know how to use AI effectively enough to cheat with it. Does that make sense? I am very interested in learning more about AI. This is my own personal mission, and then teaching my students how to use it. And I think one of the things that has been helpful in my classroom is having that discussion openly that, hey, I'm learning how to use this too, and let's learn how to use it together and let's talk about what ways it's beneficial.
So I think that's actually a great piece of advice for other teachers is to say, let's be really open about it. It's not going to be this thing lurking in the shadows. We're going to have a conversation about it. We're going to talk about how I'm learning how to use it, maybe talk about its capabilities. So it's a part of our conversation, not a scary monster in the closet.
I also don't have tons of problems, luckily, but we don't really use it much. We tried to use it in the past. Last year, we wanted to, and it got away from us. We wanted to use it for come up with a thesis statement, and then we'll go back to our own thoughts. We had trouble going back to our own thoughts. So I use AI to sometimes come up with thesis ideas. And I will put that list up of here are some ideas we could use to get us started. I don't have them all go to AI anymore. We have instead tried to build their writing skills as we go. So it's also built into our curriculum, but we've just been putting more of an emphasis on it now. We have these things called evidence logs. So every text we read, when we are done reading it, they have to update their evidence log with a slide or two, and they have to connect it to our essential question, which ends up becoming the essay prompt. They have to make a connection. They have to find evidence that supports or contradicts that connection. Then they have to analyze and explain their evidence, cite it, and then explain what they learned from the text and how like the diction and syntax in the text helps show the connection. We have really been saying like, if you put in the time now, you can copy and paste from your evidence log to your essay. That's not cheating. That's your work. So you don't need AI because you have your own brain. We've been really emphasizing that, and that has worked really well for us. In my classroom, like the time that they are spending getting that down when the text is fresh in their brain is awesome. And then when we get to essays now, it's not, oh my gosh, I don't even know what I'm going to write. Oh yeah, I remember this. So they're more locked in, more ready to go. And same like Kaitlyn said, the ones that are, it's very obvious because they have nothing to write about. None of the text that we have talked about. It's pretty clear.
I think that's excellent advice because I think one of the challenges that AI presents is that it obviates the process of invention, right? Yeah, the process of coming up with an idea, sort of developing an idea, right? But what you're explaining in the evidence log, that work is all front loaded, right? They have an idea. They're tracking that idea on their own in pieces, heavily scaffolded and guided the whole way. That's really how it should be, that the process of invention is going on for a long period of time and the writing is just putting pieces together. Might be failing kids when we say, go write an essay. That's why I think kids would panic and go to AI. What you're explaining is a brilliant sort of counter to that, that we're going to lay this groundwork and help you think through, invent these ideas piece by piece. And the writing is literally a collage of all of your ideas.
One of the things that Amanda said that I love so much about this AI process is she's helping her students to be more self-aware, more metacognitive about the writing process. One of the things that I've done with AI that's been really effective is peer reviewing essays or analyzing essays, which has always been a really important part of the writing process to help students be able to analyze writing and see what's working and what's not. And having them apply that is going to help them be critical readers of AI material.
Yes. What we're doing too has helped them see it's a process. That is the hardest part, is getting them to understand that writing is a process. It's not a one and done. I really like the idea of using AI as a peer review. I think that would give them better feedback than their peers. So I think that would be good to add that into what we're doing as well.
I like what you're both saying. I like peer reviews, not just for the person who wrote to receive the review, but a lot of the times the kids that are doing the reviewing are getting ideas from their peers. I've done something similar where I've taught my students basically how to put the rubric that I use to grade them into ChatGPT and then run their essay against that rubric and ask for feedback. Like, what am I doing well? What areas do I need to improve on? And what should be my next steps? Instead of having ChatGPT produce the content, have it give you the feedback. Now take that feedback and go apply what works. Honestly, it's way faster than the ability I have to give them that feedback. But hey, our time is winding down unbelievably. I don't think we tackled AI right there, but I think we made a pretty good dent in it. We slowed it down a little bit. We're going to transition now to our final takeaways. Lauren, as you were listening, I know this is a subject near and dear to your heart, as evidenced by the depth of research you put into the questions in the introduction. Side note for our listeners, Lauren linked articles into this and had quite the depth of information to prepare for this. As you were listening to Amanda and Kaitlyn, what are some thoughts that are takeaways for you?
There's two things that come to mind. I think at first, when we brought up AI in writing, both Amanda and Kaitlyn were like, I haven't had that much problems with it. But then it evolved into, I think, really smart, usable, concrete advice for teachers to harness the power of AI and help it help the learning process instead of focused on outcome. So I loved that even though they maybe thought they didn't have advice there, they actually gave some really concrete ways that AI can be a partner and a tool and not of an enemy. The second thing that it's been ringing in my ears is Amanda talking about that her curriculum requires a first read and a close read. I've started this personal project. I love poetry, and I have selected a poem just in my own recreational life that I am reading every day for a month. And I am literally annotating it. Those kids who think annotation is not a life skill, it is if you are a super nerd, annotating it. And then I'm memorizing it. And even as an English teacher, I have a degree in English. The depth of insight I have in going back to a poem, I'm working on a poem right now, it's 12 lines. And over and over and over again, I have mined that vein further than I thought I ever could. And it has been revelatory, again, even for me. So I just want to add that sort of amen to the power of short text. There's beauty in teaching full novels literature. I love that. You don't necessarily lose all of that in doing a short text. I am like relearning that again in my personal poetry project. Ryan, what's standing out to you?
Yeah, this whole conversation reminds me, I'm going to give a free ad for another podcast that I listen to. It's called Plain English with Derek Thompson. It's mostly sociological. He studies a lot of things and has guests on that talk about social issues. But he had an episode about a month ago on February 28th titled The End of Reading. It was about this shift in American curriculum away from novels and towards shorter texts. Our whole conversation reminded me a lot about that. But Kaitlyn actually said something that really stuck out to me a lot. And it made me feel warm in my heart because this is something I say to my students. I really love the shift in the perspective to the opportunity that even though we may not be teaching full-length novels, the increase in the amount of shorter text gives all of our students the opportunity to see themselves in the text. The text becomes a mirror for them. Also equally important is that it becomes a window for everybody else to see a different perspective than their own. So everybody's seeing themselves and they're seeing others. Another takeaway, the students that are there and that are receiving the instruction, and this comes from both Amanda and Kaitlyn, they don't need the AI to cheat because they have the skill. They can just use their skill to do it. So that's a huge takeaway in my mind for teachers listening to this is kids who can usually do. So the emphasis is on focusing on that process and building the skills. Those are my 2 takeaways. And we are now out of time. Lauren, how do you feel like it went today?
I'm energized. I love English teachers. No shade on every other subject, but these are my favorite. And we're so grateful that you guys, I know the spring can be so busy. So thank you for taking some time to share your perspectives and truly your wisdom.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right, that's it for the podcast today. Thank you again to Amanda and Kaitlyn for joining us, and for all of you for listening today. Please continue to listen and spread the word to others as well. You can subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, Google Play, Apple Music, Stitcher, or any other podcast platform. Check us out on Instagram for our breakout videos as well. We produce episodes every month. This podcast was produced by Kayla Towner. For my co-host, Lauren Merkley, this is Ryan Rarick. Thanks for listening, everybody. Bye.